want to illustrate how an economy moves from an initial capital stock level to its steady state value using the Solow diagram. The scenario we want to focus on is the economy is below its steady state. I'm sorry, economy is below its steady state. So let's start. So let's see what the steady state value is over here. We know it's our investment per worker is equal to depreciation per worker. So we know this is K star, and corresponding to this, we can find output per worker through the output per worker curve. So our per worker production function Y star. Now let's suppose economy starts at K naught less than K star. So let's assume this is K naught, and let's make a dotted line from here. So this is corresponding to it Y naught, and let's label this as A, this point, this as B, and this as C. Right, so suppose economy starts at K naught. Now at K naught, we will notice that investment per worker, which you will notice that will be at K naught, the value read from the investment per worker curve, which is AC, is greater than depreciation per worker, which you can read from the depreciation line as EB. Right, so investment per worker is greater than depreciation per worker. Right, the depreciation line is below the investment curve at this point. At this point, the depreciation line is below the investment curve. So what this means is that, so change in capital per worker, so delta K, which is change in capital per worker, which we know is equal to investment per worker, which is AC, minus depreciation per worker, which is AB, is greater than 0, right? Like you can show it over here as well if you want. Okay, we know that this much is, if we read it, this much is depreciation per worker right from the depreciation line. So this is small d. And we know this all A to C is investment per worker, small I. So this is delta K greater than 0. This is the difference between investment per worker and depreciation per worker. So change in capital per worker is greater than 0. Thus K increases from its initial starting value K naught until it reaches the steady state K star, until it reaches the steady state, because until then, change in capital per worker would be greater than 0 as investment per worker will exceed depreciation per worker. So until it reaches the steady state K star, where investment per worker will be equal to depreciation per worker, where investment per worker is equal to depreciation per worker. Now this is, we have talked about K. Now let's talk about what about, so this is about how K would move, right? Like, so we have discussed this. K, what's going to happen is now, K is going to move from K naught to K star. Why is that? That's because as long as you are at below, if you start at a level of capital per worker below the steady state level of capital per worker, investment per worker will exceed depreciation per worker, change in capital per worker will be positive, and as a result, K will increase until you reach the steady state value. So now let's look at what happens to Y. So now let's look at what happens to Y. So let's just erase this first. And so now we want to see the movement in Y also, because when you start at K naught, the associated Y is Y naught, which is less than the steady state value Y star. So we're seeing the movement in K, why that's happening. Let's see the movement in Y now, the output per worker. So the idea is this here, that since Y is equal to Fk, right, we know Y is a function of K. So basically output moves with capital, right? Y is a function of K. So if K moves, output moves. Output depends upon K. Output moves with capital. right? Since y is equal to fk, increase in k results in increase in y. So when k is increasing to its steady state value, it's going to it results in increase in y as well from y naught. We were starting as well from y naught to the steady state value y star. To the steady state value y star. So as k moves from k naught to k star, because y is a function of k, it moves with k. So y is going to move from y naught to y star. So this is a movement of the production function. This is a movement of the production function. The per worker production, movement of the per worker production function. Right, so over here we can see what's going to happen is you're going to move from y naught to y star as well, because y is going to move with k. So this is how, if you start below the steady state, you will eventually converge to the steady state.